This morning, an Israeli airstrike hit an encampment of tents near the Al-Aqsa hospital in Gaza. The Associated Press happened to be filming at the time. They also recorded the sound of an Israeli military drone overhead. Four people were reported killed, though the Israelis described this as a precise attack on Islamic Jihad militants intended to minimize harm to civilians. But inside the hospital were injured journalists who claimed that there had been no militants and that they had been working in the camp for months.
We are unarmed journalists and we have nothing to do with anything. We were preparing to see where we should go to cover the news.
Israel says militants deliberately hide in or near hospitals. But was this attack proportionate? Or is international law being broken? A few weeks ago, a senior Tory MP told a party fundraiser in a recording obtained by a newspaper of what she described as the British government's concern.
The Foreign Office has received official legal advice that Israel has broken international humanitarian law, but the government has not announced it. They have not said it. They haven't stopped arms exports. They've done a few very small sanctions on Israeli settlers.
Back in January, the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, denied the existence of any such legal advice.
Am I worried that Israel has taken action that might be in breach of international law because this particular premises has been bombed or whatever? Yes, of course I'm worried, and that's why I consult the Foreign Office lawyers when giving this advice on arms exports.
Have you received legal advice which says that Israel is in breach of international humanitarian law?
The short answer to that is no.
But since then, the government has enrolled the Royal Air Force in dropping aid on Gaza because its people are starving, while the International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to stop blocking deliveries by land. Earlier this month, Lord Cameron wrote to Miss Kearns that British aid has been routinely held up by the Israelis. The main blockers remain arbitrary denials by the government of Israel and lengthy clearance procedures, he added. As for the lack of water, Israel has the ability to turn the taps back on. They should do so. The government says it's delivered 27 tons of aid this past week alone. But the Shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, says there are serious questions about whether the government is complying with its own law over arms sales to Israel, adding that they should publish the legal advice they have received. 15 people were reported injured in this morning's Israeli attack. But almost 6 months into this war, the Foreign Office says its legal advice on Israel's actions remains confidential, though we are told it is kept under review.
Well, while ceasefire talks resumed in Cairo today, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is under growing pressure from families of the hostages to reach a deal. Many of them joined mass demonstrations calling for early elections to replace him. And there were other protests today by ultra-Orthodox Haredi Jews who want to preserve their exemption from military duty. Kieran Moodley has this report.
After 176 days, these hostages are still not home. During that time, this plaza in Tel Aviv has been renamed Hostages Square, with regular rallies calling for their return. But last night, the families said this protest was their last, that they will now take to the streets, demanding the Prime Minister gets a deal done now.
Do you hear me, Bibi? I don't know if my husband is alive. Don't talk to me about victory. Don't talk to me about military pressure. Nothing has worked so far.
Some have already taken to the streets. Here they're demanding not just the release of the hostages, but the resignation of the deeply unpopular Benjamin Netanyahu. While talks resume today over a possible ceasefire, a deal may not save the Prime Minister, because there's another issue that could topple his government. This is another protest from the ultra-Orthodox Haredi community. They're chanting to jail, not the army. Unlike other Jews, Haredis are exempt from military conscription. Yet the Supreme Court has said that rule is discriminatory and called on the government to reform the system. And today the Israeli central bank said the Haredi should join the army to help the economy.
As religious Jews, the Israeli army contradicts our lifestyle. We prefer dying, we prefer filling the jails. To the army we're not going, full stop.
The majority of Israelis believe the Haredi should enlist, given they make up more than 13% of the population, and during a time of war, Israel needs soldiers. This sketch on Israeli TV drew both praise and scorn for depicting two officers arriving at an apartment to speak with the family of a fallen soldier. But they have the wrong address, with an Orthodox man thinking they were making him join the army. So why does this issue cause a headache for Netanyahu? His government includes two Haredi parties, which provide his coalition with 18 seats. They oppose any deal that would see them forced to enlist, and they could leave his government.
The Haredi parties in the coalition, they play a political game, and they just say, we don't want to serve in the army, we don't care about what's going on outside of the community, and I think it's a wrong opinion. And I think they need to find a way, and we need to find a way all together.
Yet on the other hand, Benny Gantz, a member of the war cabinet, has said he would resign if Netanyahu offers the Haredis any concessions.
The conscription law being drawn up by the government is a serious moral failure that will create a deep rift at a time when we need to fight together.
And so the pressure continues to grow on Netanyahu. Last night, more than a dozen hostage families demanded he resign during some of the biggest protests since the war began.
Last week has felt as Netanyahu has been spiraling. Everywhere he turned, he hit a wall, with the hostages being kept in and the negotiation collapsing, with the ultra-Orthodox demanding a full exemption, and he is unable to get around this. Everywhere you turn, there is some, nowhere to go for him politically.
Today, as more protests take place in Jerusalem, Netanyahu is on his way to hospital for a hernia operation, briefly out of action. The great survivor of Israeli politics, facing arguably his most difficult time in office.